Welcome to Resiliency Redefined. I'm your host, Robyne, and I am thrilled to share with you information about resiliency, well-being, performance, education, business, parenting, and everything in between. I'm committed to joining you each week to talk about these big ideas and bring them into action, habits, tools, strategies, tactics that allow us to finally uncover what it takes to truly be well. And I'm just so excited that you're here. Welcome back to Resiliency Redefined. I'm your host, Robyne. And today I was so looking forward to this, to take a deep dive into the idea around self-care. Now, I want to introduce to you 5 guiding principles that I use when it comes to self-care, because I think there's a lot of misinformation out there about self-care. I think the whole notion of recovery behavior, understanding, how we make sure that we are okay, what is self-care, what isn't self-care. It's a question that I wanted to be able to share some insights with, and I'm so glad that you're here today for this conversation. So to get us started, the context behind what is self-care, why we're talking about self-care today, is I had a conversation recently with a group, and they were asking about what are some examples of self-care practices. And what was quite interesting, as they were giving examples, what I noticed is many of them were ideas that were giving them some temporary relief. Okay, so I think there is a component around self-care that's going to give you some temporary relief. I think some of the activities that people were sharing were actually more like things to avoid the issue. Again, I wondered how restorative some of these practices actually were. Some of them sounded a wee bit like some protest behavior. So it really got me thinking about, okay, what is actual self-care? Where does it come from? What is this all about? And what are some insights that I can share with you today? One of the things I know about self-care is I think there's this big misconception that we have to earn our recovery. We talked about this before, the when then trap. When I get all my work done, then I can take care of myself. When I get enough of this, then I can do that. We negotiate our recovery as if it's something that is a negotiable. The idea about recovery isn't a negotiable. It's an absolute necessity. So if you negotiate with yourself when it comes to recovery or self-care, my invitation for you right there is to recognize this isn't something that's optional. And there's that saying out there that if you don't pick a day to take care of yourself, your body will. And we know this looks like getting a cold when you finally get a day off, or getting sick, or perhaps it impacts your relationships. So we know that being able to have recovery is extremely important for maintaining high performance and excellence. But then the question is, why is it so hard? Why is it so complicated? Well, I think first and foremost, there's a lot of noise about what self-care ought to be and what it could be, what it should be. Well, that goes alongside with there's just so much information about what health is or well-being is, that there's just this jogging monoxide, right? All of these sayings, all these acronyms, all these things we ought to be doing, where people are just kind of left lost. And then they sum it up as, a bubble bath and some essential oils. Like that's maybe that is recovery for you, but there's so much more to it than just that. Now, I love when I hear from people that they struggle with recovery or self-care because they feel guilty. So I've done this before on the podcast. I've shared my thoughts on this guilt idea, but I'm going to say it again because, as Alan Stein Jr. says, it's so good, I'll say it twice. A lot of us have that idea of guilt because we feel like we're breaking a rule. So if you feel guilty about taking time for yourself, the question I would ask you is, what rule are you breaking? Now, the rule that many of us might not even realize we think on some level we're breaking is the rule we grew up with that says things like, when you get all your work done, then you can go play with your friends. When you finish your homework, then you can watch your favorite shows. Right? So we have this propensity of believing that we have to get all of our work done before we can do anything that's restorative, that's pleasant, that's pleasure-filled. We have to do all the work first. But as a mother, I can guarantee you that the work is never finished. There's always something that I could be doing. So I know personally, I had to unlearn that habit of only looking after myself when everything else or everyone else is taken care of. Because the reality is none of us are going to get to a point where you're like, I have completed everything. There's not a single thing that I need to do. Now, I think another kind of misconception when we think about self care is the element around maintenance. This idea that we just don't have to do self care once and then we're going to be okay. The reality is, self care requires consistency to get the best benefit. So it's not just something where we like pack in all this stress, we pack in this burnout, this overwhelm, and then we like take one day off and then all of a sudden we're better. We have to maintain a practice of self care moving forward. It's something we want to build that consistency with. It's going to help and make a really big difference. Okay, so when we think about self care, first and foremost, I do also want to hold space to say whatever you believe is self care, and it actually is self care for you, it does help you feel restored. It helps you feel rejuvenated. It helps you feel more grounded and well resourced. I don't believe anyone can tell somebody what those things are or they are not. You are your own expert. Because if somebody looked in on my life and said, okay, part of Robyn's self care practice is she likes to stay up way too late reading her favorite books to the point where she sacrifices some sleep every once in a while, that's probably not self care. But the reality for me, I'm able to do it in a way that actually makes me feel restored, energized. The next day, I feel great because I fell in love with a story. If I'm doing that behavior and in it, I recognize like, no, 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 I am just procrastinating or I am protesting trying to get more sleep. I'm my own expert. I know when I'm doing things in a way that's going to keep me, like we talked about last day, above the line and when I'm operating below the line. So trusting your own intuition. You know when you are BSing yourself. You know also when you are leaning in and you're taking good care of yourself and this is working for you. I remember when the children were just babies, I remember walking through the grocery store and there was a radio station that was playing and it was actually, I remember it was CBC radio and there was an expert on there and they were talking about, what is considered recovery behavior and what is not considered recovery behavior. And it was interesting because I remember, child and baby bucket seats. I had two toddlers holding the end of the cart and the woman actually said on this radio show, she's like, going grocery shopping by yourself is not self-care. And I had a moment thinking, do you know what? If I actually was grocery shopping by myself right now, it would feel probably a lot more relaxing and restorative than trying to do this. And I remember feeling a wee bit agitated about like, who are you to sit there in your studio and pontificate what is self-care, what isn't self-care? Maybe getting a wee bit of reprieve, someone else looking after the little ones for, 45 minutes so I can run into a grocery store. Maybe that could be restorative. Now, you might say, no, that's just basic necessities of, you have to have time by yourself. But again, it's your interpretation of it. The key idea is that when you're doing it, you're doing it with the right intention, that this is a time you're using that space, that time, the resources, whatever it is, in a way that's very kind, it's restorative, and it's replenishing. Okay. How do we even figure this out? There's 5 concepts within self-care that I think make the biggest difference. So when I'm working with executives and we're doing one-on-one coaching, I shared that I'm doing a lot more of that recently. I love doing that, helping people kind of find their greatness, figure out what works for them. It's pretty awesome. There's 5 areas that we focus on. So I'm giving you a wee bit of an insider peek on this idea when we're helping people co-create these structures for helping us feel good. Okay, so there's 5 in them. Number 1 is boundaries. Number 2 is compassion. 3 are values. 4 is power. And 5 is discernment. Okay, so I'm going to tell you just a wee bit about each of them. Boundaries. Self-care requires boundaries. Now, I don't think about boundaries as, I don't answer my phone after 8 p.m. or I don't look at my email on the weekends. That's not what I'm talking about with boundaries. Boundaries are about access. How much access do people have to me? And I like to think about boundaries. And I remember hearing this before long ago. It's a life enhancing system of yeses and nos. A life enhancing system of yeses and nos. It's about access, about how much I let people in, how much I share, how much I commit to. Boundaries are ways in terms of what are my guardrails that I have to make sure are in place so I continue to do the things that matter most and I'm able to meet the needs of the people that matter most to me, the people who need me to show up on my A game, which is my family system. So, again, how do I also make sure that I'm showing up for my family system, but I'm also showing up for my clients? I'm showing up for my teammates, right? Knowing what that life enhancing system of yeses and nos look like. So, what are the guardrails? So, again, last day we talked about that piece around accountability and knowing when I'm operating above the line or when I'm operating below the line. So the question I would ask around access is what are the things that are going on? What is the level of commitment? What are the stressors? What are the responsibility components? What are all the things that are happening right now? And are they within the container that I'm still able to do those things and operate how I want to be able to show up for the people that matter most? So again, it's the boundaries. And sometimes that means that things that I care about deeply, I might have to put a pause on, I might have to defer, but I'm being realistic with my energy, my time, my priorities. So that way, again, I can show up. Now, I know personally when everybody's home, when Hunter's home from university and everybody's home, I want to cram in so much in our summer days because I just want to make the most of it, right? It's this really sacred time. The days are longer. It's a season of play and joy and merriment. But for me to be able to meet my goal, which is to be a present parent, to be somebody who's there and really engaged, I might not be able to do all of the things that I want to do because I want to be able to enjoy the time that I am with them doing the thing. So again, it might mean putting just some parameters around some other expectations I have for myself this season. So that way I can be in it, but also enjoy being in it, not just present, but like engaged. Okay, so boundaries are really important about self care. The second around compassion. And when I think about compassion and self care, it's recognizing that because I'm doing it consistently, it's going to look different. So, for example, my self care some days might be just, a 20-minute walk in the morning with the puppies, right? Maybe my self care could be a 20-minute walk plus a little bit of a workout. Or maybe my self care might be a little bit of a walk and maybe just some sauna time or some time to journal. The reality is, I don't try to do it all at once or take on so much that it becomes just another thing on a to do list. I want to make sure I can enjoy it. And to be able to enjoy it, I want to make sure I'm being present to myself. And again, recognizing some days I'll have more energy, other days I might have a little bit less energy. I was just recently interviewed on Danny's podcast, and we talked about she's a new mom or has young little ones, and she was talking about how do I get my workouts in? My life is so busy, and I shared with her a tool that I've used, which I've had varying degrees of success with, but more than not, it's been really effective. Is essentially having three different types of workouts. And I remember this, especially when the kids were little, having three different workouts. Workout one is where I can lock in. It's like a boot camp, go hard and hit heavy. And I love to get a good sweat on. And yes, I can do that intense workout, but that would require at the time childcare, right? So there's a time when I can do a workout like that. And then my other workout is going to be like a very tender, soft, gentle, soothing the nervous system. That might involve some stretching, slow walking, just again, an activity that I could do likely with the littles, but I'd be able to do it in just a really gentle, a soft, kind, tender way. And then I would have a little bit of a mashup in the middle. And depending on my time, depending on the resources, but also my energy, I would oscillate between the different types of workouts. Now, as my kiddos are older, and obviously I do not require childcare, heck, my children are providing childcare for other people. One of the things that I learned is that now I can oscillate just between the two. I can do one heavy, hard workout, or I'm going to have like a pretty tender, easy, more about stretch and flexibility workout. And depending on how I feel, I can oscillate between either of the two. It's not all or nothing. The third variable we talk about in this framework for self-care are our values. this idea of, is this what matters most? Is this in alignment with how I feel? And again, as I said at the top of the show, there are so many pieces of misinformation out there. There's so much, again, information that is so not even scientifically valid that people are feeling bad about themselves. They're feeling shame and guilt that they're not doing these things, but it's okay. You don't need to be doing them. So, one of my values for me is to be a critical thinker. So if I'm feeling guilty about chasing these like hype cycles about things we ought to be doing or could be doing or should be doing, if I get myself stuck in that noise, I'm not living within my values. I'm somebody who wants to be a critical thinker. I'm somebody who looks for the evidence. I go to my brain trust. So I'm connecting and learning from people that I know have taken the time to do their homework about it. And I'm operating within my values. So I'm not chasing some of these false promises. I'm not chasing these one quick fixes. And the reality, if you think about anything that's going to fix all of your problems, whoever it is or whatever it is, the reality is it's probably not a very good business model if it will only work once. Right? If they're going to fix everything, what a terrible business model, right? They want you to buy into this. They want you to think that you have to buy your well-being or buy your recovery. The reality is we are well resourced as we are, and we have what we need to be able to look after ourselves. So the values are important. Now, the variable 4 that I want to share with you, and this is kind of an interesting one because I think this is one that never really gets brought into the conversations about self-care, is the idea about power. So we have an innate tendency, okay, this is in our makeup, in our psychology, that we need to have agency in our own life. We have to be able to make decisions. We have to be able to plan how we want to show up. We need to have that ability to be the captain of our own lives. Now, I appreciate many of us are in positions where you are reporting to companies or to leaders, or there's all this outside influence into how you do your job, how you even maybe even live, how you, gosh, I remember, when you're raising kids, everyone seems to have an opinion when you're raising little ones, right? This pressure that we have to like do, everybody else knows better, everybody else is trying to figure it out. But the reality is that we have this need for agency. So one of the things that I think is extremely important when we're building self-care plans is that we build in that component of personal agency, being able to say yes or no, being able to choose what we do next or how we want to recover or what that recovery looks like. Having that agency over our time and our energy and our behavior and our actions really matters. And the last idea to help guide your self-care decisions is what we call discernment. Knowing when you need to do that hard workout and knowing when you need to take a day off. Knowing when you are going to pick up that phone when that person calls or when you actually have to send it to voicemail because you are not in a place energetically to show up for you or show up for them. So again, discerning what is it that I actually need? What is that I'm supposed to be doing or ought to be doing versus what actually is me in alignment, me operating with integrity, me being values driven, me having those guardrails around my time and my energy and my focus. So when you're thinking about whatever your self-care or your recovery program or practices look like, my invitation is to make sure we're considering the boundaries, recognizing access to us as part of self-care, understanding the piece around compassion, meeting ourselves where we're at and knowing that it's not that we're doing it wrong if we're burning ourselves out. It's just probably we're out of alignment. And thankfully, we can readjust, we can refocus, reprioritize as many times as we need to. The other piece around values, knowing what matters most and making sure that we're showing up in a way where we feel values aligned. Because when we're operating within our values, it makes a difference. It actually matters in terms of how we feel, how we recover, and how we show up. The fourth one we talked about was power. You need agency, being able to say no, and no being a full sentence, being able to pick and choose what makes sense to you, not because somebody told you, but because you've thought it through and it makes sense for you. Being able to, for example, choose when do you persist and choose when do you take a moment, when do you pause. When do you give yourself the benefit of the doubt and come back stronger the next day? And the last one around discernment. Again, that ties in with that piece around our power and agency, knowing where you will get the best return on your investment. Again, appreciating that your self care recovery plan is unique to you. What it makes sense to you is all that matters. So, if somebody was to look at your self care plan and be like, oh, well, I don't know how recovery or restorative that would be, it doesn't matter what other people think. It's whether or not this makes sense for you and you're getting the desired effect. Something that I know is when you have a self care practice that is giving you relief, that is more than just temporary fixes, where it actually feels restorative, it's actually not hard to commit to it. You will be drawn to do it because it gives you such a great return on your investment. And the other gentle piece here is the invitation that our self care is going to change. Something that worked for you perhaps last year might not be what your body and your heart and your head, energetically, spiritually, that you need right now. So, yes, we want to be consistent, but we want to make sure that it's evolving with us, that it's something that's growing and expanding in relation to what our needs are right now. So there's no right or wrong way to do self-care. How you do it, that's totally your own prerogative. My invitation is to do it consistently. And one little tip in terms of a practical way that you can take this, I've shared this before, is thinking about your day in quarters. What's one simple thing that you can do for yourself first thing in the morning to set yourself up for success? Maybe it's just waking up and the first thought you hold is to say thanks. Starting your day with a place of gratitude. What are three new things that you're thankful for today? What are things you're looking forward to? Have a little bit of wish casting, right? Today, I really wish that it's going to unfold this way. Or spending some time outdoors before you even pick up your phone. Just getting a bit of those outdorphins, as they like to say, just getting some good vitamin D first thing in the morning. It's going to help with your sleep. That's something gentle and easy and practical that you can do. Now, just because it's easy, it doesn't mean it's simple. It's something that will give you a big return, but it's accessible, something that you can do in the morning to set the tone for how you want your day to unfold. Now think about the second quarter. Maybe that's mid-morning. Maybe that's lunchtime. Maybe it's even just moving your shoulders, maybe stretching while you're making your lunch, or even just making sure you're drinking some water. You're looking outdoors. You're maybe sending a funny meme to one of your friends, like something that you're doing that's going to be in alignment with your values. Just sending a check-in email to your kids that are working, whatever that might be. But midday, you're doing something that is value aligned for you. End of day, one of my favorite practices I've shared is I love reunions. And I've shared this before, that idea that when we see our loved ones, have your face light up, be excited to see the people that matter most to you. That is a form of care. That's a form of stewardship. You are looking after the relationships that you are entrusted with. Now, as I shared before, my family likes to refer to me as the golden retriever of mothers. I get very excited when I see my kids. And just recently, Hunter shared a story with me that literally brought tears. So, as some of you might remember, and I've shared this on an earlier podcast, Hunter is working as a camp counselor this summer. And what's really beautiful, he's working as a counselor at a camp that he and his siblings went to when he was little. So, this is his big full circle moment. He was a little Trent Summer Sports Camp kid, and now he's a counselor at Trent Summer Sports Camp. It's a big deal. And this past session, they have the same little group for 2 weeks. And this past session, Hunter had they called them the Otters. They're like 4-year-olds. Like these are little people. And Hunter had this group. And he said to me at the end of the session, he said to me, Mama, you know, your strategy, your tip about being just really excited to see people. I said, yeah. He said, Mom, I did that with intention every morning with my little campers. And he said, by the end of the 2 weeks, Mom, they were as excited to see me. We would have these amazing reunions every single day. And he said, Mom, you get it. It does make a difference that people just want to be seen. And what was so special is those little campers, they were so excited to see Swish, and Swish was so excited to see them. And even families commented at the end of the session about how excited their once nervous, anxious little camper was, that as soon as they saw Swish, they knew he'd be so excited. And one little camper wasn't sure if they wanted to go, but then thought, oh, but I don't want to disappoint Swish. I know he'll be so excited to see me. And again, my friends, the little things aren't that little after all. Okay, that's midday, end of day reunions. The last of our day and quarters is, end of day sign off, whatever that looks like for you. Maybe just taking 5 minutes at the end of the day just to notice what you got right. Notice what you were able to accomplish, maybe, but just notice what you got right. Notice where you showed up, where you were able to be on your A game, where you were able to be in alignment with your values. Maybe you notice you handled something better today than you would have yesterday. Just take 5 minutes at the end of the day to take notice of what the day was like. I often think back of times when, we didn't have all these communication devices, and people would write letters at the end of the day to their loved ones and tell them about some of the things that were going on. And I kind of think about that end of the day wrap up as a little love letter to yourself, right? Letting that part of you know that, yeah, you got most of the stuff done, or maybe you didn't get any of it done, and that's okay, because we practice self-compassion, whatever it is, but just taking that pause to recognize you're doing good work. You are not broken. I think sometimes this whole field of self-development sends us this message that every one of us has all this work to do. Well, sure, enlightenment can be challenging and it's a lifelong pursuit, but at the end of the day, I'm very confident that things are going right. And inevitably, if you look at me and say, Robyne, today I didn't get anything right, okay, well, I at least hope you started your day by making your bed. The research, this is shocking. People who make their bed are more likely by 300%, which I don't even really understand how they use this statistic, to be more successful. People have more resources. They have more money in life when you are a person who makes your bed. So if all else fails and anything that you are navigating, if you could just be somebody who makes their bed every morning, that's something you can say at the end of the day, at least I did that part right. I am even somebody who makes my bed when I am in hotels, because I am so committed to being somebody who, no matter what, I make my bed, I pick up after myself, because I am a person who does that every single day. Okay, my friends, I hope that was useful. Thanks for hanging in there. That was a wee bit longer than I intended. Please keep your questions coming. If there's anything that's top of mind for you, I'm confident it's probably top of mind for somebody else. And I'm here to be useful. I want to share and keep learning beside you. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week. Bye for now. Thank you for spending time with this podcast episode today. I hope you found something helpful in Resiliency Redefined. Please feel free to share it with somebody who you might think could benefit. Maybe there was something useful, something in particular that you think you could pay forward. Also, if you have a moment, please feel free to rate and review this podcast wherever you like to listen to your podcast. It means the world to me. And again, thanks for your time. Thank you for your interest. Take good care, and I'll see you next time.